Thank you so much for joining us on At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. We are going to discuss something that has been brought up many times in the past, and that is siltation in the Illinois River and Peoria Lakes. You might remember years ago there was an effort to build a dredge to remove silt from the river. And then really the question of removing silt from the lakes has been quiet, except for, yes, they're building an island in the river, and yes, we've moved some silt up to a brownfield up in Chicago. But really, where are we long term? We're going to discuss that with the following experts who are looking at how to solve the problem. Tom Tincher is with us. Tom is Executive Director of the Heartland Water Resources Council. Across from him is Pastor Tony Pierce. Pastor Pierce is Secretary of the Heartland Water Resources Council and also with the Community Transformation Institute. Also with us, Nanny Bomek. Nanny is with the Illinois State Water Survey at the University of Illinois, where he is the Principal Scientist Emeritus. And also joining us is Wayne Ingram, Vice Chair of Heartland Water Resources Council and with AMEC Engineering. And John Marlin is here. John has been studying silt longer than I've been alive. No, that's not true. That's not true. No. John is with the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center at the University of Illinois. Thank you all five for being with us. And we probably should start with a definition of what the Peoria Lakes is like in terms of sediment.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the Peoria Lake, I just want to give you a very two-sentence summary of the Illinois River. Every year on the Illinois River, we get 12 million tons of sediment coming into the Illinois River as a whole. Out of that, 55%, 6.6 million tons are depositing within the Illinois River Valley. So this is one of the highest sediment deposition rate that we know of. In terms of the Peoria Lake, if you look at the 1903 as our starting point, it used to be 120,000 acre feet of volume. Acre feet means 1 acre, 1 foot deep. So 120,000 acre feet of volume. In 1985, for which we have a final number, is 38,000 acre feet. So the Peoria Lake lost significant amount of sediment. Now, from where all this sediment coming from? Part of it obviously from the main stem of the Illinois River, part coming from the local tributaries, all the bluff watershed. To give some idea about the local watershed or the area from where the water comes into the Peoria Lake is about 3% to 4%. That area contributes on an average year 50% of the sediment that coming into the Peoria Lake, which is approximately 2 million tons per year.
That's a lot of silt. That's a lot of work that needs to be done. Tom Tincher, what's your plan?
Well, the reality is that Nani's pointing out is that the lake is filling in and will continue to fill in unless we intervene. And so our plan is to develop an approach that's a comprehensive approach that looks at a variety of funding sources to carry that purpose out, that it's a massive investment that has to be made. And rather than put that on the backs of taxpayers solely, the focus is on a comprehensive approach that includes economic development as a primary area of focus. The mission now that Heartland Water Resources Council is on in cooperation with the Community Transformation Partnership or Institute is one that basically says, let's save the lake by growing the economy. And concurrent with that also is let's save our neighborhoods by growing the economy. And finally growing the economy. And so we are on a course now to use private development as a means to generate significant amount of revenue that could be pledged to saving the lake, as well as the finding private uses of sediment, where the sediment could actually be sold for topsoil purposes or brownfield mitigation purposes or other value-added opportunities.
So the audience has a better idea. We look at the lake and we still see a pretty wide expanse. Do we know how deep the lake is on average?
I think it's approximately 2 feet or less.
Less than 2 feet, except for the channel. Now
right. And in 1903 again, it used to be 8 foot deep, 1903, below 440. 1903. Now, I suspect it will be 2 feet or somewhere close to 2 feet.
Okay, so and let me show you what that might mean in the future if we don't do anything. And now we're talking about 2 stages. We're talking about removing some silt, and we're talking about also keeping silt from going in, new silt from going in. And it might look something like this, and this is what Tom Tincher is afraid might happen to Peoria Lakes, looking across essentially a mudflat, Tom?
Mud flats and willow trees, mosquitoes. That's really our future unless we intervene. That particular picture is of Eastport Marina looking across the Peoria lakefront. And it's those areas that by intervening and developing a dredging program that would assure the ongoing availability of water for East Peoria's lakefront, that adds value to that lakefront. And so our program is to capture that value to help pay for the dredging.
I want to talk about the challenges that you face in accomplishing this. It's a massive undertaking, but first, you mentioned jobs, and I want to turn to Pastor Pierce. Jobs are coming from where, and what kinds of jobs are we talking about?
Well, there'll be a number of job opportunities that'll be developed in concert with this system of development to take place. There'll be obviously the conservation project. There'll be development projects because we do have a massive 274-acre project getting ready to start as well. And so there'll be a range of jobs across the full spectrum of sectors: education, healthcare, business, public administration, and so forth and so on. And so we're looking at initially off of, as an example, the big project that we were talking about back in the green room. We're looking at about 2,000 construction and construction-related jobs over the next 5 to 8 years, and 1,000 permanent jobs once the project is developed. And then when we look at this project, when we talk about the mud to jobs and the other projects, we'll be looking at thousands of additional jobs.
Okay, I want to talk about those. You made references, a 275-acre project and et cetera. We're going to talk about the specifics of that, but first I think it's more appropriate to talk about the challenges we face in taking silt from a river and a lake. What are the challenges that we face?
Well, first off, there's the cost of energy these days, and once you get past that, it's how do you remove it, and most importantly, where do you put it? So the technology exists either hydraulically or mechanically or with some other methods to remove lots of sediment from Peoria Lake. The issue becomes where do you put it at what cost? So the volume we're talking about will require quite a few acres piled very high. There's enough sediment in the two lakes to cover a football field about 10 miles high.
Well, then why don't we just do that? That's the solution.
It's realistically, we need to think in terms of doing a certain amount of dredging on an ongoing basis because the sediment's going to keep coming in. Last year we took over 100,000 cubic yards to Chicago to use on an old brownfield site.
The U.S. Steel site.
The U.S. Steel site.
Mm-hmm. Let me turn to you, Wayne. Have you tackled this in terms of cost, in terms of moving this silt? What is the plan right now? And I know we're early, but...
Well, there are a number of factors, and one of them is if we can find an economic use for the sediment to offset the cost of dredging and transporting that material, which is quite high, and I don't have a number to throw out at you as far as what that cost is. But if we can find uses for that sediment as opposed to just stockpiling it, that would be a big benefit to the overall project. Transportation
has to be a major concern here. I mean, sediment is extremely heavy. It's wet.
Right.
What's it? I mean, I assume that's going to restrict you in where you can take that sediment.
Well, it's certainly a major factor, but the other end is what is the value added at the disposal site? If, for instance, if we're taking it to Chicago to reclaim a brownfield property to make it an industrial park, a recent study has shown that there's about a $16 to 1 leverage that can occur. In other words, that the sediment that we'd put on that property to reclaim it would add $16 for every dollar of investment. and that's assuming we're involved on the development side of that reclaimed site. You know, so the end use and the value added is going to be a very important factor.
Now, something else to consider there is Peoria Lake is basically our Lake Michigan. It's the signature feature down here. So every cubic yard we take out of the lake is a local benefit economically and aesthetically. Taking it to Chicago or St. Louis or some other place provides a value there, and a value people don't think about is when you get topsoil in a place like Chicago, it's frequently coming from farms in the suburban areas or from a development in a suburban area. And then the housing development ends up having very little soil left. So we're basically getting a triple benefit here by helping restore the lake, providing soil where it's needed, and leaving soil where it belongs in the suburban areas.
And I want to turn to the jobs aspect of this in just a moment, but you've had extensive background in the growing value of sediment out of the lake in terms of growing tomatoes, whatever products or produce you grow.
Yeah, we've had our first huge project moved 70-some barge loads from Peoria to Chicago in 2004, and that sediment has been supporting a whole range of tree species, grasses in the park up there, and a variety of prairie plants. And the experiments we did at the University of Illinois with Dr. Darmody, we mixed the sediment with biosolids and horse manure from the racetracks and urban composted yard waste, and the soil out of Peoria Lake is extremely fertile. We do have a few issues with some chemicals and things like that, but we're well on our way to having them resolved.
And that was an issue at one time. Chemicals are not an issue right now, Nani? Or,
No.
or not a major issue, let me put it that way.
Well, John and bunch of us from the Illinois State Water Survey worked together looking at the chemicals. If I remember it correctly, the upper part of the sediment is not bad quality, but as you go deeper and deeper, the quality decreases. So, and other thing also in terms of the sediment, you have to keep in mind every year about 1.5 to 2 million tons of sediment is coming to the Peoria Lake, being deposited. So even if you remove 1.5 million tons every year, still there will be sediment coming.
It's a break-even game then.
Right. So yeah, unless you do more.
It's a renewable resource.
I want to talk about these projects a little bit more in depth. Tom, I want you to address the 275-acre project. But first, Wayne, can you tell us a little bit? John mentioned the biosolids from in this case, it would be the Greater Peoria Sanitary District. Can you mix the biosolids with the silt and then dry it out, process it, whatever you need to do to sell it?
Yes, that would be a really good beneficial use for that material. The two materials mixed together add nutrients to the soil that can be applied agriculturally to land to increase fertility and raise crops.
And the question then would be getting it to the location. Would it be
Correct.
more likely to be bagged and sold to individuals?
Well, I think you could do it either way, bagged and sold, or sold in bulk.
Okay, and then
One of the opportunities we're pursuing right now, of course, Stan Browning is very cooperative and working with us on it. We're working with
by the way, Stan Browning is the director of the sanitary district here in Greater
Right.
Peoria.
And we're working with a group out of Ottawa that are now using 350,000 cubic yards of biosolids out of the Greater Chicago Sanitary District and using that for farmland topsoil. They're looking at mixing our biosolid and the sediment and establishing an operation down here that could use that agricultural purpose.
Pastor mentioned some significant job creation. Can you tell us a little bit about where these jobs are going to be coming from, what this 275-acre project is?
Yeah, as the coordinator of that project, the Community Transformation Partnership is serving in that role, is that we will be in a position to identify job opportunities and to establish various programs to help bring them about. So there'll be jobs within the campus, several thousand that Tony mentioned, but the 274-acre master plan development will be a revenue source to help support mud to jobs and the dredging program. The dredging program alone, just in the lower lake, we estimate there probably be from 100 to 200 truck drivers, as an example. There'll be several hundred sediment processing center workers. We're looking at developing the sediment processing center on the south side of Peoria in cooperation with the Greater Peoria Sanitary District. If we are aware that, say, 2 years from now we're going to start the dredging and we're going to need 100 truck drivers, we'll be working with Illinois Central College and District 150 and others on developing training now.
But my question is, where's the money come from if you're going to do this? So the chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah, we're by not having a master developer involved in this large-scale development, we'll be able to generate millions of dollars that can be used for the public purpose. And our whole not-for-profit group is based on a philosophy of a social entrepreneurship philosophy, and that is, how do we use private development to support these public purposes? And there'll be millions of dollars coming out of just this first regional project to support the public purpose, and the public purpose is save the lake and save our neighborhoods. In addition, we're working with a group of local lenders and the Federal Reserve, where we believe that and the course we're on, would give lenders Community Reinvestment Act credit for making loans in the suburban project, where we can show that there will be jobs and benefits to the distressed community. And in return for that benefit, that's a value to the lenders, that our hope is that we establish us in a position of having a 1% interest rate on all the mortgages that are in fact issued. Not additional cost to the person or the entity borrowing the money, but it would be part of the lending package with the lender that would be pledged to this project. So if there's $250 million in mortgages, 1% annual interest rate on that, that's a substantial ongoing revenue source.
The 1% comes from where?
Well, right now we're in negotiation and working with the banks in terms of the CRA credit that they get for that, which is of value to the banks, and therefore they can afford to give a percentage or some fraction of a percentage back in exchange for that.
And then we're asking the Federal Reserve to provide some discounted dollars to our local lenders to help support that program as well.
Okay, those are the jobs, those are the projects. You've got to take the silt out, and you're suggesting you create a secondary channel, secondary to the primary channel that the barges use, that the Army Corps maintains. Let me turn to Nani Bhowmick. What are the ramifications of creating a second channel that would be, I assume, 9 to 10 feet deep like the primary channel?
Well, number one, before we create it, we needed to do it mathematical or hydrodynamic modeling to find out what's going to happen. Two, we cannot divert a lot of water, reducing the flow in the main channel, navigation channel. So we had to maintain the navigation channel open, because that's where all our barges is going up and down. Three, there is a hydrodynamically you have to find out what it should be the angle of the secondary channel and how much water you can divert without hampering anyway the main channel. So it needed to be done ahead of time before really we start to do any kind of construction or development. The navigation channel and the secondary channel must work together. One cannot work without the other. So hydraulically it should be viable. So the secondary channel will stay open, not filled up within 1 or 2 years.
And so we haven't done enough study yet to determine that?
No, we have not done that.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
We have not done that.
So we still have some steps to go through before we can worry about.
Correct.
Okay. But before we run out of time, real quickly, and we may get back to that issue, but there's an island being built. That's a habitat island, as I understand it. How's it doing?
The island is pretty much as finished as it's going to get for a while, and it looks pretty solid at the moment. The concern people like myself have with it is that it's low. The original plan was to build it about 10 feet above normal lake level so that we could get the kind of trees to grow that used to be on the islands before the navigation system went in, because the soil would be drier. But the funding was not able to produce that much, so there's only a very narrow band that's 10 feet above. So when you cross the bridge, you'll see there's a lot of low spots on the island, and it gradually works itself up onto that narrow band. So it'll be a good habitat for the critters and trees that like the really shallow water and the wet soil like we have all over the lake. So I'm basically been recommending we hold off on the 2 other islands that are planned up there until we have a few years' experience with the new one to see how well it works.
But on a volume basis, this is not a good, effective way of removing silt by creating islands.
We need some islands to restore habitat, but what happened in this case is because we couldn't get it built as high as we wanted, we did not create as much deep water habitat or as deep a water as was intended for the acreage we donated the island. You got to remember, whenever you build an island in the lake, when you're trying to save it, you're taking that much water surface out of the lake. So if we're going to do that, we want to get a lot of deep water in the remaining water surface and not build a whole lot of really low islands.
Did they just run out of money?
The cost of doing that was more than expected. So yes, they ran out of money before they got up to the elevation that was intended.
Okay.
The project, as done, it's going to have a lot of environmental value, but it's not a good trade-off for a long term. If you want to do more islands, they need to be high enough to use a substantial amount of sediment and restore a substantial amount of depth. You can't trade them acre for acre. You need a better return than that.
I think the other aspect of that, I think Heartland Water Resources Council position would be also that any future islands, a great priority ought to be given to how do they support the secondary channel concept. The original concept for the islands was they not only were going to be habitat islands, but they were going to provide the framework for the secondary channel, and we need to make sure that gets incorporated in any future planning.
You mentioned the 275-acre project. That includes what organizations?
It includes Illinois Central College, OSF St. Francis, Central Illinois Agency on Aging, a group of local developers, and a number of others.
And this will generate, this is public and private,
Right.
and it will be an investment, and money will come out of this
Yes.
for Heartland Water Resources Council use?
It'll come to those 2 designated purposes I talked about. 1, to save the lake, and 2, to save the distressed neighborhood.
But is this voluntary, that the developers are going to give money to Heartland, or?
No, because we don't have a master developer putting together this major project, that dollars that would have been profits that would have gone into the master developer's pocket are coming to this common cause.
And they've agreed to that?
The developers have agreed to that. Yes.
Okay, and that means the jobs you're talking about. But those jobs are going to be spread across not just distressed communities.
Right. There'll be, as we said, of these eventually thousands of jobs, the upper class, the middle class will benefit from them as normal, but there'll be hundreds of jobs, literally, for the distressed community residents we hope will
Are
get.
these permanent jobs or are they temporary jobs? Because a trucking job might be only temporary or might be seasonal in nature. Are we talking permanent jobs?
Yeah, we're talking a mix of jobs, and most of them are permanent jobs, yes.
Our goal is to establish a permanent dredging operation to save the lake. So these would be ongoing jobs.
And we haven't decided exactly how we're going to be dredging the lake.
Correct. We don't know exactly what areas to dredge, how deep, all that needs to be decided through the hydrodynamic modeling that Nanny spoke of.
And the timetable for all of this?
Well, right now it's being driven by the approval of the development agreements by the development partners for the first project. And as that project is brought forward, there'll be a concurrent proposal for the East Peoria Lakefront restoration project. And I would say within 6 months, we'll see that going to the city of East Peoria and the city of Peoria.
In 6 months?
Probably
and then,
6 months.
And then next year maybe some activity?
Yeah, we'll actually see the first phase of the initial suburban project. Construction will commence this fall or this year yet. On the balance of it, it's probably a year and a half from now.
Are you as optimistic?
It's their project. I'm not part of the planning of that, so I'm not the guy to ask that question. My main issue with developments around the lake is to realize that this is our Lake Michigan, and where the lower lake is basically an urban lake, a lot of the other lakes are more rural or conservation oriented. But we need to be very careful to protect the public interest, and That means to me what little parkland we have around the lakes needs to be kept intact, and development needs to occur not in existing parks, but in areas that need redevelopment. And when you talk about the East Peoria side, there has to be some careful thought given to how much green space there is between the lake and the development and the rest of it.
And with that, we have lost our half hour of time, but we hope to continue the conversation here at this table after we go off the air, and please continue at home. I'd like to say thank you to Tom Tincher of Heartland Water Resources Council, the Executive Director, to Nanny Bomick. Nanny is with the University of Illinois State Water Survey. Sometime we'll talk about what the State Water Survey is. John Marlin with the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center. Thank you all three for joining us. And on the other side of the table, Pastor Tony Pierce with Heartland Water Resources Council, as is Wayne Ingram. We thank you both for joining us in the conversation. Next week, please join us again on At Issue as we talk about the question, we're going to stay on the Illinois River. We're going to talk about expanding the lock at Peoria, just south of Peoria. The pros and cons of that on the next At Issue.